Hello everybody, welcome to the Zog Best Practices webinar, and we're going to go ahead and get started right now. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Christopher Claunch. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, and I'll be your host today. I guess your Toastmaster, if you will. And by popular demand, it looks like we're going to have quite a crowd today. I just wanted to start by introducing our feature speaker, Federico Pena. He's our founder and president. And as most of you know, or many of you know, Federico is uniquely qualified to present and share because he's been zogging since before blogging with Clarity PPM, Niku, and before that, ABT, for those of you that go back that far. So to do a little bit of housekeeping on questions, the Gotowebinar Panel is the box that's located in the control panel on your screen at the lower right-hand side. As you can see, if you expand it by using the red arrow pointing over to the right, you can type your questions into the panel there, or better yet, you can ask questions via the hashtag CAZOG, and the reason that I consider this better is because it'll enable us to continue conversations after the close of the webinar today. The focus of this webinar is to help the users, the people in the Clarity PPM community, to solve real problems and to fix real issues. There's way too much to cover to just start with Zog Best Practices and go Zog Best Practice number 1, Zog Best Practice number 2. So this is an opportunity for you to interact with your fellow users. And really, we hope to even get some people and some users maybe over a bump in the road right here and now today on the webinar. So question and answer sessions, this is how it's going to roll out. This is the syntax of the webinar today, and this is very important, very critical that we make this interactive. Not like the boring PowerPoints that you sit through in the conference room where nobody says anything. We are really going to look forward to participant interaction. Now, if by virtue of this popular demand that we have today, should your questions not get answered, what we will do is that we will provide the answers in a transcript, and that will be along with a video replay of the webinar for you. And we'll send that link out to you tomorrow. A couple of other things as far as this interaction. I'm inviting challenges for any questions that you might have or challenging the particular approach. And bring up tough problems, something that you might have been stuck on for quite some time, or just simply propose a different point of view, a different perspective, a different approach, a different idea, and to really encourage this sharing of ideas. This introduction of the new idea could be a plausibly better way to Zog and hopefully help everybody. You know, the bottom line is I like to play Stump the Expert, and Federico, with his storied history here being the expert, be forewarned, I try often and I'm not all that successful all the time. So in the question that's being asked on the slide, what is Zog? Federico, I think you probably would have to be the one that would be best suited to answer that question. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you guys for attending this webinar. And as Christopher said, you know, one of the main purposes of this webinar is for everybody to be able to get something out of it. If you're stuck, we want to collaborate between us to make sure that everyone gets a clear understanding and at least gets through main problems that they may be having. You know, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and cover, you know, some object migrations. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on Xslt because, you know, I want you guys to understand the power of it. And then some tricks that we've learned in the past, you know, utilizing Zog. So, you know, when people ask me what is Zog, you know, I always tell people you know, Zog is like poker. 5 minutes to learn, but a lifetime to master. There's always little caveats and little loopholes in it that make things a little bit more complicated than one would expect, and it makes for a tough go. Sometimes it's easy to get lots of data and easy to load lots of data, but it's difficult to load specific data. You know, when people ask what is Zog, well, Zog, you know, obviously everyone knows it stands for XML Open Gateway, but really what is it? It's just a SOAP web service. It just happens to be, I'm going to say, a complicated web service that doesn't necessarily always follow, with the exception of custom objects, it doesn't always follow a particular streamline, therefore difficult to understand how it completely ties together. So what I'm going to start off with is with the Zog URL. So whenever you're trying to do a Zog call, and of course if you're using the Zog client or anything, or if you're writing some type of web service application, whether it be in Java or ASP, this is basically the tie-in. So this is where your SOAP endpoint is, right? Which is basically your Clarity connection, Niku / WSDL or / Zog. And Zog really contains 3 different actions, or 3 different possible things you can do. One is invoke action. I'm going to be honest, we rarely use this. This is to kick off a particular action within the BG engine inside of Clarity. I think I've used this once for a client. But the most common one would be what's called the object web service. And this is when you actually get the Zog client. This is the piece that allows you to extract and push data back in. So all of the templates that you get in your XML folder, those are all of your templates that come here within your object API. So this is what allows you to extract data and gives you the templates to push data back in. And the second piece is what's called the query API. And although we use the query API very frequently, the query API is very unknown. So this is basically any NSQL that's inside of your Clarity now becomes available for you to extract data out of via a web service call. Okay, and obviously every NSQL contains attributes, right? So these are the particular attributes for this NSQL. Okay, and if you notice, if we come up here, okay, up to the top, this gives us the element filtering that's available for each attribute. Okay, so in this case, the field key ID, okay, can have 4 different types of filter. This first one is called an equal. So that means the filter that I pass must equal a value, and it's going to filter by that. And then it has a from and a to. This is common for numbers or dates. And an in. And the in is our favorite, or my favorite, the most common one, which accepts comma-separated values. And the beauty is you can send one value or multiple values to extract data. And hopefully we have a little bit of time to cover some of the query API and how you actually make calls to the query API. But you know, for now, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to cover some object migrations and Xslt. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is, what is Xslt? Xslt stands for Extensible Markup Language. And what does it do? It just, you know, like everything else, it's complicated to learn, but once you learn it, it's very, very simple to write. And especially, you don't even necessarily have to learn it. Once you have some examples, it's easy for you to copy particular examples to make it do something that you may need it to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's say we want to migrate an object from one environment to another. Okay. So let me open up an object here. Hang on here. Okay. And this is whenever we extract data from Clarity, particularly objects or anything on the admin side, it's very difficult to add additional filtering on what you want to bring out. So in this particular case, we're bringing back an object, but for every attribute, we're bringing back all the language codes, we're bringing back queries, we're bringing back portlets, views, everything that's related to this particular object, but you might only want to do, the only thing that you might want to do is you just might want to bring in the attributes, because as you know, Zog, if you're migrating, it requires that referential integrity be there. It would be the same as building something through Studio. Before you create an attribute that's associated with the lookup, you have to make sure that the lookup is there, right? So if you're trying to send something, you want to make sure that all the referential data is there. So when you do this through Zog, it brings everything with it within that one call. But in general, if you're not doing any type of Japanese or Chinese characters or Korean characters, this might cause a character set issue when you're trying to load your data back in. And this is where Xslt comes in very powerful, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this XML file and I'm going to transform it with a basic Xslt file. So this is my basic Xslt file, okay? The top part just does some basic house cleaning. It removes the Zog output. It removes the last updated by. The reason I remove the last updated by is because when you Zog it back in, you're going to be updating it by yourself. And if the particular user that last updated it before isn't in the system, it's going to cause you problems. And then I always go and change the version to a static version that I know that my new target is going to be. And then what I do is I come and I remove all of what I call garbage or nonsense, right? So here in my template I say for all the language codes, remove everything that's not in English, and then here it removes the pages, portlets, processes, job definitions, and so on, and everything else that's associated, right? One of the big issues that Zog has, and this is a big one to make sure that you remove, is the auto numbering. It doesn't really respect auto numbering. It'll always restart it, so I always remove the auto numbering scheme, and I also always remove partition models. The partition model only needs to be created once, and every time you extract anything, it'll bring the partition model, and sometimes it can bring additional garbage that you might not want, okay? So now let's take a look and see how we can translate, this particular object, okay, into something more legible. So I'm just going to grab a file here. All right. So I'm just going to go into an Xslt transformation script. And what I want to do is, the first thing I want to do is I want to paste my XML. So I'm going to say, I'm going to select everything here. And then I want to select the Xslt that I want to utilize to transform. And here it transforms it for me, okay? So I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to paste it inside of Notepad so you can see the big difference between the two files. And let me just all right, so here we've basically taken an object that contains 175,000 lines of code, and we changed it for an object that contains 2,300 lines of code, okay? So this gives us the ability, like I said, to be able to now manipulate data in flight and clean it up, okay? Very, very simple. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and load this data into Clarity. So let me just log in, make sure I have a correct password. Okay, so this is a very basic example of Xslt transformation. Now, one of the things that we will be doing is we will be providing lots of Xslt examples. within this webinar. You know, we've got a couple of hundred. If you have something very specific that you need done,
hey Federico?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know I always get in trouble when I interrupt. We're getting some questions in, several questions, and it says the early bird, Andy, had asked, what is Federico running for running the Zog? He usually uses the command prompt at this point.
All right, so this is a tool that we have developed. We provide this particular tool for free. I'm just going to open up a website here. If you go to our website, zogbridge.itroisolutions.com, you register. There's a web-based version. What I was using was a desktop version, so you could use either or. It has double functionality. It allows you not only to do Zog requests, but let's say you're on demand and you want to do a quick query against the database. You can do and you run the query, and it'll dynamically build an NSQL for you and pump out the results for you. Okay. I'm not gonna spend a huge amount of time talking about this. I will cover this a little bit more, but this allows you not only to do Zogs, straightforward Zogs. It allows you to do bulk Zogs. So let's say you wanted to do, you have 100 Zog files that you want to do. You can literally come here and say, well, I need to run. Let's see, where do I have that? And XP, and let's say I want to do, I can do a whole folder at a time, right? And I can say run, and it'll dynamically run one at a time and populate all of these for you, right? So it allows you to do batching and all sorts of stuff. But like I said, I'm gonna stop a little bit, because if I get any deeper into this tool set, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the other additional items that I wanted to cover with inside of this demo. So we covered what is
just real quick. We put a link in the hashtag CAZOG for that we just answered your question. Thanks for the questions you guys asked, and we'll get to some more of those after when Fed's ready at the next pause.
All right. Yeah, I see another question that I see that is actually sort of related to what I just did, which is how can I export a specific view for an object by name? And this is especially handy if you're doing, if you have partitions, if you have partition models and you extract an object. Although it does bring the view tags, it doesn't bring all the views for all of the partitions. So what you want to do is you actually want to use the object view read. And let me just see if I can find an example of one. I don't happen to have one here in my XML file, but I think I have one in another. So, and I'll gladly post this for you, Mike, so you can use it in the future. And let me just quickly grab a file here. And views. So you want to make sure that your XML, as opposed to being object query, it has the view query, okay? And you utilize the object code, okay? There are different types of views, so it depends whether you want the list of the properties, but I'll send you both examples. So you can actually get the views for the list page, and you can get the list view for the properties. And like I said, if you need to specify partition code, if you have partition codes, you also need to extract it separately for each partition code. Okay, I'm gonna close this. All right. So we covered a little bit of using Xslt. I'm going to get into a little bit of discussing batching Zog files versus multi-threading Zog files. Auto numbering with Zog, that's another thing that I'll cover quickly. And you know, different options of what you can do with complete equals true, delete equals true. As everyone knows, Zog either creates or updates, but there are options where you can actually delete data from Clarity via Zog. So I'll provide a couple of examples of where that's possible. And obviously, like everything, there are limitations to deleting. TSV and Zog. So TSV are timescale values. Timescale values in Zog, they're a different animal on their own because anything that's TSV related does what's called a sweep and replace. Meaning if I have 3 values in the timescale value, so let's look at team allocations, for example, and I have team allocations for 1 year, and I only need to update 1 value 1 month, and I want to do that via Zog, I actually have to send all of the existing values in there. Otherwise, it's going to wipe out the existing data that's inside of that timescale value. So anything that's a blob within Zog really does sort of like a find and replace. It does a sweep and replace altogether. Okay, and then auto numbering with Zog. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with auto numbering with Zog, but you know it doesn't work with all objects. It does work with some objects, but what we're going to do is we're going to provide a simple workaround that you can use, especially if you're on premise. I mean, for on-demand, it is possible, but you have to ask the CA team for permission to insert a function. But the way we get auto numbering, if you want to utilize the Clarity auto numbering technique, is we write a function inside of Clarity. Okay. So auto numbering in Clarity, really, how does it work? It works with a stored procedure called the CMN auto numbering get next value from the stored procedure, and it's expecting some particular in parameters, such as the object code, the attribute code, and the partition. Those are the main ones that it's asking. Okay, except the problem is there's no way for you to query that data. You know, you could execute that stored procedure, but when you execute that stored procedure, the out parameter can't be really achieved unless you have you're using Toad or you're using some type of database tool. So, but if you wanted to utilize it and get it from the actual application, well, what we do, like I said, is we write a function, and we'll provide an example of this function so you guys can utilize this function. Okay, and then we write an NSQL, and the NSQL is pretty straightforward. Okay, it selects a row num ID, and then it makes a call to that particular function, and then we put a parameter with the number of IDs that you want. Okay, you do want to make sure that you use this store procedure as opposed to querying the autonum get next table. The reason being is from the time that you get the values from that table and you use them, somebody else could actually use that ID, and that'll cause conflict and it'll cause data integrity issues. So what the stored procedure does is it utilizes the ID before it gives it to you. Therefore, it makes sure that nobody else is using that particular ID. Okay? So this is a very handy way for you to get auto numbering values out. And you know, for those of you that are having issues with auto numbering and need additional assistance, we've got thousands of examples on how to do auto numbering for every type of object and custom object and so on. So feel free to reach out to us on that topic.
Pat, do you
Sure.
Pat, do you want to answer the question? Can you post to your Xslt library if you didn't already?
I believe in one of the next slides we're going to cover that. It has already been posted. As a matter of fact, right here. And I can post this. I can put this. Oh, I was going to say I could put this in the chat. But yeah, I believe it's actually even in Twitter. The link might be in Twitter under CA Zog for the XSLT. And like I said, those are basic examples. So I'm going to show you what we basically posted. We posted one for objects, okay, and then I posted one, and where is it? Let me open up the other one. I posted one that contains all sorts of different examples with, code. So, if you wanted to create project, whether it's from template or not, so an Xslt that'll define whether it's from template or not. This one here will handle multi-valued lookup, so it'll take a particular value and tokenize it. So it can actually be in the same format as a multi-valued lookup. This one here does an OBS removal. The OBS has 3 nodes, name, ID, and path. Well, if any one of those is null, the XML will fail. So what this will do is it'll actually remove the complete element of the OBS to make sure that your XML doesn't fail. This clear tag, this is used, so if you're doing integrations, for example, the way Zog works is if you send an XML, and I'm going to actually open up another XML value here so we can actually, let me just, all right, so in this case, let's say I'm looking at a project data, right? And I have, all I'm sending is the project name and the project ID, okay? But that means that nothing else within inside of the project data is getting manipulated, okay? But let's say I want to blank out a field called status. All right. So if I want to blank out a field, what I need to do is I need to send it like this, blank, okay? And I'm going to say there are exceptions to this rule, particularly around dates, resource hire dates, and so on. They actually expect you to put null in here. So if blanking it out with just a blank value like this does not work, try putting the word null inside of the tag to null out the particular word. But let's say you have an integration and you need to send this value like this, okay? Well, the problem is the way you're going to write your integration is you're going to say if no value comes in the tag, you want to remove the tag because in general you don't want to wipe it out unless the end client automatically wants to wipe it out. So what you tell them is you put something like this in here. And after it builds the XML, then you process it with an Xslt. Okay? What the Xslt will do is it'll look for this $clear, okay? And it'll literally just wipe out that value and leave a blank space in between the quotes. So very handy when you want to wipe out values automatically. Okay? This is another example if you want to wipe out an OBS based on a particular value or something. Or when I say OBS, keep in mind that this is very straightforward. You can look at how this is built based on a tree, right? And basically you're going to your OBS associations node, element, and then you go to your OBS assoc node, and then you say if ID is location, then wipe it out. Okay? And then we provide all sorts of different ones. In this case here, what I wanted to do is I wanted to migrate some security parameters from dev to test, okay? And when I did that, I need to make sure that I send the complete equals true. So that was another topic that I wanted to cover is because Zog either creates or updates, okay? If I have a user group that contains 5 rights in production, but we're moving it from test, and test it only has 4 rights. Well, I needed to take everything that's in production and do a sweep and replace, basically wipe out what's existing and wipe out and send in the new stuff. I need to send a tag called complete equals true. So what this Xslt is, it'll go and whenever there's a tag called OBS, it'll add the attribute complete and it'll add the node true. Okay? So I did that for, for OBS, for global rights, for instance rights, instance OBS rights. And these are other additional examples on how to do different items. So for example, in this case, I'm providing an example where you switch IDs in flight based off of a file with an Xslt. And different things that I'm doing. I'm resetting values to, in this case, I was migrating a bunch of users and I needed to set the manager to admin because the managers didn't exist before I loaded the resources. I had to load them twice. Therefore, I needed a default value in there, so I wiped that out. So these are all different types of examples of what you can do with Xslt. But like I said, sky's the limit. So if you have a particular need that you might need, let us know, and we'll gladly send it to you guys. I just want to stop and say, because I haven't covered anything around batching or multi-threading, I am going to be doing an integration best practices with Zog webinar. So the main focus of this integration webinar is going to be how do you deal with thousands or millions of records with Zog, right? To make sure that it's friendly, that it's not too heavy for the Clarity environment, that it doesn't take too long. What are the best methodologies of batching, and how can we do it so we can make the integration take the least amount of time, tasking the Clarity server with the least amount. I'm going to stop for a couple of seconds and answer some questions.
Hey, Fed.
Yeah?
How about how to identify which field will take null or blank?
Oh.
That's from Viraj.
Yeah, so I think you guys remembered at the very start, I said Zog was like poker, 5 minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. Those are one of those lifetime to master things. Unfortunately, there's no, I'm not going to say that the documentation is lacking. I'm going to say that it's not very clearly defined. I'm just saying that at least if you have both options. If it's going to be a trial and error. If one doesn't work, you'll have to try the other. But either one of the two will work.
Okay. Let me get the next question for you, Federico. And you may have, some of these you may have already answered, Fed, because they were coming in as I was answering other questions. Is the Zog tool OD compliant?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with on-demand, what on-demand wants to make sure that you do is that you do everything via a supported platform. So what that tool does is it basically, as I mentioned before, Zog is just SOAP calls. So this tool, because it does APIs and API is on-demand compliant, then therefore the tool itself is on-demand compliant.
And there's another question that asks, how do you load it on demand?
How do you load it on demand?
Yeah, let me make sure I got that entire question in its entirety. How do you load documents for on demand?
All right. Okay. That was a piece that I didn't actually cover within Zog, but so Zog in itself accepts web services, and as I mentioned before, it requires you to put an endpoint URL. Okay. The only exception to the endpoint URL is when it comes to documents. Okay. The problems with documents is that documents must exist in the server that you're pushing the web service call to. So let's say, I'm going to just provide a quick example here. Let's say I've got these particular documents and I want to load these documents onto my Clarity environment. Okay, I need to, so the call for the documents from within inside the XML is I have to actually put a root relative path to this location. So you have to make sure that you have a map network drive to your on-demand server. I know on-demand allows you to do, allows you to do the map server to their FTP. So that would be the approach, is you want to FTP the files, okay? And then in your XML code, you translate and make sure that you put a root relative path to the location of these documents. But the documents themselves cannot go through HTTPS. The only thing that can go through the HTTPS is the actual link to where the documents are located on the Clarity server.
Excellent. That's what I would have said. Federico, can we transform the XML with the Xslt and Clarity other than the web-based tool that you just showed?
Sure. There's lots of different, I mean, Xslt is extremely common in XML transformation. So if you just Google, you know, free web Xslt transformation tool, you know, the only problem is with web-based transformation, they're fairly limited on the amount, on the size that you can put on there. So if you try and put an object that's 15, 20 megs, you'll be hard-pressed to find something on the web that will do that. It'll just bog down and probably choke. Usually it's about 60 to 100,000 characters that a web-based application will let you do. Well, that's if it's asynchronous, right? If it's doing it in the back end, or if you have your own process, then you know you can get that to work. But yeah, there's lots of different Xslt transformation tools that you can utilize.
Oh man, I just went to two questions at the same time. Can you explain, Federico, what cannot be zogged?
Oh boy. All right. So I'm going to open up Clarity here. So I'm going to say, generally speaking, okay, and this is very generally speaking, anything that's inside of Studio can be zogged. So that includes any configuration that's in here, okay, as well as lookups or any associations, as well as instance data. Now there are limitations to this. For example, I'm going to get into the first item, which is action item. Action items can be zogged, okay, but the only action items that can be zogged are the ones that you own. Meaning, if I log into Zog with my user fpenna, I can only update action items that belong to me. I can't upload action items that belong to somebody else. That would be the only object that that particular piece applies to. Okay. As far as what cannot be zogged in general is just about, okay, in data administration, inside of documentation, data march settings, data march stoplights, time slices cannot be done, okay? Audit trail and notifications cannot be zogged, okay? And under project management, okay, anything that's timesheet, options, time reporting periods, any of your settings, no calendars, okay? Nothing under general settings can be zogged either. And in here, I know inside of no, these can all be done. System currencies cannot be zogged either. I said no calendars. That includes the resource calendars as well. That's all I can think of, although I do have a list somewhere. I wasn't really prepared for that question. I have a list somewhere because we've done lots of SQL to Oracle migrations via Zog, and we've got, you know, we've done a lot of stuff where we had to actually put manual input to make sure that it went in correctly. I see a question also, is there a way to zog action items? Yes, action items are zoggable. So CA Clarity in version 12 came up with a mobile app. I believe it was global delivery, and they added the API for action items. But like I said, the action items can only be manipulated, added, or removed for yourself. So you can't change the status of an action item for somebody else.
The you know, me and my team of Zoggers think special characters are tough.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to come back. Yes, definitely. Big problems are something like single quotes in usernames, you know, O'Hare, O'Neill, those kinds of things. They cause a lot of problems. So normally, I believe in most of our Xslt examples, the first thing we do is we look for special characters, and we get rid of them and we mark them. And I'll provide an example of how to fix special characters within Zog.
And Federico, did you ask, is there a way to Zog action items? I think I heard you answer that question.
Yeah, I just answered it. Yeah, there is a way. There is an API. It's not a documented API, but it's an API what CA came out with a few years ago. Global Delivery did for their mobile application.
Okay, I'm checking Twitter. One of the things that I'm doing right now, Federico, is down in the chat. I went ahead and put the Xslt link.
Okay.
Can we get API to Zog action items?
Sorry, run that by me again.
Can we get the API to Zog action items?
Yeah, I believe they should be available in the Zog folder. But if not, if you can't find it, feel free. Feel free. We have a section on our website that says "Ask our experts." Just ask there. That'll go to support. Support will send you the API call for updating action items. That definitely exists. As far as are there any Zog Bridge examples and documents on the site that we can start with? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go to the web-based section. So once you log into the web-based section, you click on User Guide. Once you click on User Guide, it'll give you a PDF on, you know, how you can do what you can do and everything that you can do via the web and via the desktop version. And if you have any other additional questions, feel free to send us a note. There's also a section on our website that we will put a link up to shortly that allows you to put feedback and enhancement requests for it that we normally look at least once every 2 weeks, and we're consistently updating the Zog tool. Not only for you guys, but for us, we do a lot of work with Zog, so you know, we're trying to make it a better tool for everybody else as well.
You know, the head of our support team, Luis, said that you can always reach out to the support team. That's at, I'll post that link as well in case you just want to ask directly at customer support at IT-ROI-solutions.com.
Okay.
So they've all, support, because we don't have any help desk tickets besides from me for my Outlook issues. They've got time to help out. So I'm just pasting that in the chat, not in the questions, and they'll be able to help you there with some of those. And I've got a question that now is getting pretty technical. How does code equals quotation -1 quotation or instance code equals quotation -1 quotation work for auto numbering?
So that was
question.
that was one of the things I was covering at the very beginning of the auto numbering piece with inside of Zog. So like I said, not all objects are supported for auto numbering. So if you use allow auto numbering equals false with inside of the header tag of your XML under custom objects, then you have to put -1 for that auto numbering to work. But you have to make sure that that particular attribute and that particular object are auto numbered within inside of Clarity. So as long as those two things are true, then that auto numbering should work. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily work for all objects. So you just want to, that's why we provided the secondary option on how to update your auto numbering via a function and a query.
Okay. Let me see if there's another one once I answer that question. Well, Federico, I think we scheduled this for 45 minutes, and I'm wondering if we want to go ahead and wrap up and allow people to continue to ask questions in some of the support links that we provided. And then also, as you can see, that very handsome team of CA Clarity certified experts that we have that will answer your questions. You can always use the hashtag at CAZOG. And I don't know that we have a link, but by popular demand, I was at the London user group meeting last week, and we're going to go ahead and do this again for them, and they may have some different questions and things that need to be answered. And we'll also be sending the link to you so that you can, we'll shorten it and take out any of the extraneous ums and ahs and pauses and try to make it as swift as possible so you can review, and we'll fill in those answers to questions that I wasn't able to get the whole answer to. So Federico, that's all I have. We don't have any more questions in the actual questions for the GoToWebinar. So thank you everybody so much for jumping in, and I really do encourage you to ask the experts some of the questions. And okay, can you approve a budget through Zog? I can't help myself. It squoze in before I hung up.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we're working on a client right now where that's the particular criteria. You can actually not only approve it, you can create and approve. So yes.
All right. Fed, do you have any parting statements today?
I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to make sure that anyone that needs any other or additional information, just feel free to send us questions. We'll be glad to answer. And like I said, feel free to use the Zog and Query Bridge client. I think you guys will find it quite useful. It's available free of charge for everybody. And if you guys have any question in that, feel free to also send an email to customer support. And they'll help you guys out.
Well, thanks again, Federico, for taking time to do this, and Luis and Nestor and Glenn and Waleed and Mark, Teresa, everybody who supported us on the IT-ROI side, and we hope to hear from you guys soon out there in Clarity PPM land.